What's up? What's up? Yeah, you watching this. Hello, how are you doing? I have not been doing a whole bunch of vlogs or anything to where it's just primarily me looking into the camera like I'm doing now. I did post something earlier today. What is today? The 4th, to where I invited you to come and help me be nice to someone that in my community. So if you didn't live in Guthrie, America, where I live at, you wouldn't really have an opportunity to do that. But I did a short video just kind of looking into the camera saying, hey, come help me be nice. But I want to say hello to you. I deeply appreciate y'all. But what you're about to watch, besides my podcast with Jenna Worthen, is just me recording my podcast, just the beginning part of it, because what I want to do is start separating the actual beginning of my podcast from the time that I'm actually sitting down with the person that I'm doing the go-in conversation with. So you're about to watch me record that. I type it out on my on my podcast. I type it out on my iPad, and then I kind of read it. And so you're going to watch that. Anyway, I thought it would be cool just to let you know here on YouTube, a little something special. If you just listening to the podcast, you're not getting this. You know what I'm saying? This is for you folks who are on the YouTube channel, because I love you. Okay? This is for you. So just watch me do what I do. And again, I always like to say, I'm just learning. I am just learning. Hey, subscribe. Tell your friends to subscribe. Subscribe to the YouTube, to my podcast. Go to linksforheady.com. You'll find my podcast, all that stuff. Subscribe. Join the email. Let's grow this go-in community. Come on. Let's do this. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for hitting that play button for another episode of the Hetty Coleman podcast, where I have go-in conversations with fabulous people so I can get their story out to you so you can learn from it, be inspired by it, and connect with them. I'm pumped about my first ever Hetty Coleman podcast meetup, so I had to tell you about this. I'm super pumped about it. I want to build a real go-in community around my podcast, a community of people who are striving to learn from each other, be inspired by each other, and just connect, just go deep with one another. This first one will be primarily people that I have had on the podcast for a go-in conversation. I hope to have more that consist of maybe you all, the audience, and then also people that I have on the podcast, just really digging in. And that way you all can even share stories with one another in person and just get to know one another. I hope to host them maybe quarterly. We'll see, but I'm really excited about it. Like, I feel like this is a good direction that I'm going in and building this along with the podcast. These meetups will really help people, I believe, go further, better in our stories, in your story. But anyway, so on this episode, I have a go-in conversation with Jenna Worthen. Jenna is a wife, a mom, entrepreneur, and founder of Moms Who Work. Let's jump into the episode. Yeah. I always ask this question when I started. Am I saying your name right, Jenna? Because I will mess up a name.
Yes, sir.
Jenna Worthen.
Yes, sir. You got
it. Is that it?
Yeah.
Did you see that, ladies and gentlemen? Did you see that, huh? Yes, I got it right. So, Jenna, we're going to jump right into this. So thankful that you're here with me today. And I'll just say, we've already kind of talked about this, the pre-podcast. We've met several times, Enneagram, at the Collective, City Care. And so we're kind of familiar with one another, follow you on social media. So, but for the people who are listening in or watching on YouTube or whatever, would you give your 120-second story?
Yeah, thank you, Hetty, so much for having me. Any excuse to come to Guthrie, America and hit up Missy's Donuts. If you haven't been, you need to go. I was actually born and raised right outside of Kansas City, Missouri. I moved to Oklahoma to play soccer for Southern Nazarene University. and that was tremendous. And then, I graduated in 2008. And at that time, if you could get a job, you took whatever job you could find because there were not jobs. Mm-hmm. And I was fortunate to fall into a job at a political consulting company. And I thought I was going to go to law school, and I put that off and decided I wanted to see how this went, and ended up getting my master's instead in political management. Uh-huh. So for the last 12, 13 years, I have run a successful political and nonprofit consulting business, primarily around fundraising. And that has led me to, I met my husband. We've got 3 kiddos, 2 little boys, and we have a baby girl. She's 2.5 months old.
Okay.
And we waited she was a surprise baby. We didn't find out if she was a girl or a boy ahead of time. And it was just such a delight. And so now what I'm doing is I run my company. It's called the James Martin Company. Mm-hmm. And that is important to what we're going to talk about because James and Martin are the middle names of my sons, but also the name of my dad and my grandfather.
Oh, okay.
So, and I love the idea of, considering our legacy and our past and how that like what we carry forward with us matters. Mm-hmm. And then I just wrapped up a contract with CityCare as their chief storyteller. And that was just a joy. I own a stenopad company that I created called the Task Keeper.
Okay.
And I love stenopads, and they're
What is a stenopad? I don't even
Okay, so a notebook that's bound at the top, and it flips this way. Yeah. So there weren't beautiful ones, so I made one a few years ago. So that's a little deal. And then I have
Where do people find that at?
thetaskkeeper.com.
Taskkeeper.com. You know what? I think I've heard. Did you mention that at the collective?
I might have.
Taskkeeper.
Yeah, it's thetaskkeeper.com. Taskkeeper.com was way too expensive.
The Taskkeeper. I'm just writing down.
That's perfect.
Yeah, keeper.com. Okay.
And then my favorite project that I have right now too is I have curated a online community for moms who work. So it's called Mom Who Works, and our goal is to redefine what it means to be a working mom in a world without working dads. And what I mean by that is no one ever calls my husband a working dad, but working mom often comes with lesser pay and less career mobility and higher expectations. And I just want to redo how that we have that conversation and help women.
Okay, so now I'm tired
from
all of that. So I have some other questions I was going to ask, but first of all, how do you manage all that? Are there some habits that you have in your life, some routines to be able, because that's a lot to juggle.
Yeah.
And your mom and your wife, how do you juggle all that?
Well, for starters, you have to ask for help. Right. Yeah. So I've got a nanny that helps. I've got someone that helps clean my home. I've tried to outsource and empower others to do as much as they can. But I have a great nighttime routine. I have a good morning routine when I don't have a newborn, But I just found early when I had my first son of how important it was for me to keep things that made me feel like me.
Yeah.
And
that's good.
So I've also gotten very good. This is my number one thing right now is I believe your calendar is your capacity. Mm-hmm. And so if it's not in my calendar, if it doesn't fit, I can't do it.
Yeah.
And I've gotten really good. I've had to create like a no statement, that just says like, thank you so much. I'm at capacity right now. Let me recommend you to somebody else,
I like that.
Which is, it's nice too. There's other people in my industry and they're coming up and I'd like to pass them stuff to do and learn. And I think it's just an idea of abundance over scarcity.
Yeah.
And that makes all the difference for me.
That's really cool. Really cool. So can you talk a little bit about what your night routine and your morning routine when it's great, the morning routine when you don't have a newborn?
Sure.
And kind of maybe how you decided on what's in the night routine and what's in the morning.
Yeah. So one thing that I have decided I absolutely hate are wild mornings, right? Like I don't want to be in the last minute trying to pack lunches and get kids to school on time because I've got to be at a meeting. Like, so much of my life depends on like getting somewhere at the right time.
Yeah.
And what I actually just redid it this week and looked at like how much time do I need to do the things I care about. Mm-hmm. So I decided I needed 90 minutes at the beginning of the day and I need 90 minutes at the end of the day.
Okay.
And then I kind of decided what fit in there. So I don't know if you've read Atomic Habits by James Clear, one of the best books I read last year. And so his idea of cues really resonated with me. So if my kids go down for bed and I sit my butt on the couch, I'm not getting up.
Yeah.
You know? So I have to put kids to bed and walk past the couch.
Yeah. Yes. Or just remove the couch.
Yeah, like just one
no
of those.
couches in my
house. Exactly. So instead I go get in the bath. And it's like 15 minutes. It's not long, but I like decompress a little bit, chill out. Then that's easy to lead into some like light yoga or stretching. And then I've got a little bit more energy. And I can go ahead and, pack lunches or do the thing. So I broke it into 30-minute increments, to be honest with you. So it's like 30 minutes for me, allowed for 30 minutes with my newborn because I want to make sure I didn't miss her that day, and then 30 minutes prep for whatever that means. So sometimes that's work emails, packing lunches, just whatever I need to do to wrap up the day. So then in the morning, it's, 30 minutes to get myself ready, 30 minutes to get the baby ready, 30 minutes to get the boys ready, and I just kind of broke it out into what those tasks were. Yeah. And then we jokingly called it at our house the back math, so like, what time do we need to leave the house? Okay, great. I know I need to get 90 minutes before that.
So do you write that down on your calendar or do you have
so I hang clipboards outside my master closet, like in the bathroom where I walk past. So I actually have my monthly goals on a clipboard. And I have my rhythm I call it my rhythm on the clipboard. And then I have whatever workouts that I'm trying to squeeze in, and those are 10, 20 minutes tops right now. That's all I have time for. But and that way I walk past it every day and just, it's this kind of reminder that like, hey, this is the stuff you've decided matters. And you need to stick to it.
Now that was the evening, right?
Yeah.
So what is the morning and what are some key things there?
Yeah, that's the morning was I've got to get myself ready first. So that's the 30 minutes for me.
Yes. When you got to leave, you have that 90 minutes. Exactly.
So I would look at it that way. Like, I think that people, this idea of a morning routine has gotten, I love it. And I love when I can be getting up at 5:30 and have all this time for myself. But I'm probably up at 3:30. So like, I can't be doing that, And I just think that people forget that in different seasons of life, those rhythms look different. So when you're following this entrepreneur that you love or somebody and you're like, holy cow, look at all the stuff they got done that morning. I'm like, oh yeah, their kids are 14. They don't need their,
There's a big difference.
Or maybe
there.
They don't have kids.
For sure,
it just looks different. So I think having grace for yourself and figuring out what are your non-negotiables and building those in and building everything around them. Yeah. Now I think, I'm in a privileged position too, right? Like I can do that. Yeah. And because I own my own company, I've got some flexibility in how I spend my time. But I think even if you've got a hard, be in the office at this time, I mean, I think that you can make it work. Just be realistic with how much time you can give yourself. And I think you can have one or the other. Yeah. Like you have a great night routine and your morning is just function. And that is perfect.
Yeah. That's good. That's real good. I wasn't expecting for us to do that. Now, how do you determine the goals that you have set? Because you said you have monthly goals. Yeah. So do you have quarterly, annually? Yeah. So and what is some of the things that you do to kind of come up with those?
Yeah, actually, I use, they're called Power Sheets. So it's cultivatewhatmatters.com. They created this Power Sheets journal, goal setting journal. And you do a lot of work at the beginning of the year. And then each month you sit down and you build your tending list. So I come up with monthly goals, weekly goals, and daily goals. Okay. And then that's what I hang outside that I can see. And what I do is I schedule myself a 2-hour personal alignment meeting, at the end of the month. So I'm maybe having mine actually tomorrow morning. I'm a little behind, but to where I redo those lists. Okay. And Hetty, I'm telling you, I have never once met every goal that's on that list. Yeah. Right? Never once. But do you know what? I might meet that goal in 8 months. And if I didn't start putting it on there today, it's coming in 8 months. But if I didn't put it on there today, then it's coming in 10 months or 12 months or, and it's good reminders. And my daily is something as simple as it's walk, write, and read. Like just as long as I can do those 3 things that day, that's helpful. My weeklies look like, one-on-one time with each of the guys in my life. Including my husband, hopefully, and, he gets the last probably there,
Honey, you just didn't make the list.
I'm so sorry. But, that's our season of life. And and then I do the front work, is you do have things. I like to look at quarters. I think from a financial perspective, that's a lot more practical too. And then just kind of look at life and its natural rhythms and seasons, and so it's like, hey, I know not to do a whole lot in the summer when my mothering load is a lot more, right? Yeah. But I know that, hey, September, that's a great month for me because it's back in rhythms and back in routines. One thing too that I like to do is like just schedule some block. I do a lot of time blocking so that I can get the most important things done that need to be happening. The urgent, I think, tries to
always
mess that up too much.
The urgent
and you just
always
can't,
tries to overtake.
right?
Yeah. So listening to you seems like you're super organized, right? And I know it's all kind of, you can have your seasons where I'm super organized and then where I'm not.
Yeah, don't look at my house. I'm not organized there.
So going back to when you were a kid growing up, was there some things that kind of helped you become this person now? And what were those? Were there some key relationships or just kind of your personality?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think part of it was, it was just who God created me to be, and but I came from a family of high capacity leaders in different ways, though. Like my dad is the most hardworking, detail oriented. I mean, I call him like an archivist. I mean, like his ability to like track things and attention to detail, and then my mom, I mean, I watched her juggle, teaching piano lessons out of our home, being a worship leader, being a full-time mom. So I think I picked up on that. And, they were really good at empowering me to be involved in what I wanted to be involved in, but I still had to work. We weren't in a situation where I was having a car and all that stuff if I didn't go to work. Yeah. So I had to figure out real quick how to keep all those things functioning, and as a collegiate athlete, that was a lot of work, and I've still had to work. So I think that they set high expectations, but they also were high grace, and so that gave me I think it actually gave me the freedom to fail less than I would have if I was in a really rigid situation.
That's good. When you were younger, what did you imagine yourself being when you got older?
I went through a couple different phases of that. So for a long time, I wanted to be a pediatric oncologist.
Okay.
I loved chemistry. I mean, I'm really nerdy, Hetty. It's fine. And then I learned about medical malpractice and tort reform. So I'm telling you, I'm nerdy. So then I decided I wanted to be a lawyer.
Okay.
But for a long time, I wanted to be like Secretary of State or a U.S. Senator because I thought that was the way to have impact, right? Yeah. I grew up with a very politically active family. I saw my mom. I mean, I can remember in third grade, my mom standing on the steps of the Missouri Capitol speaking. Oh, wow. And we had a phone line in our home for a PAC they had called Missourians for Academic Excellence. Okay. I can just remember those things. So that's how I thought you made a difference. Yeah. And then now, as we talked earlier, there's lots of ways that make a difference. And I find that I'm getting greater impact, just in the private community than I would as an elected official.
Yeah. Now, so now that you've come to be who you are now, but when you were younger, were there some key relationships outside of your parents that you can speak of that was a mentor or something like that to kind of help you get to where you are now?
Yeah, I had some coaches along the way that really believed in me. And then, I definitely had some coaches that didn't believe in me. And I'm just now doing the work of undoing some of that, I can still, I've always been too much for a lot of people, so I think that some of those relationships that mattered the most were the ones that believed in me and championed that in me. In high school, I was in the, student council or whatever. And one of our what do you call it, sponsor for that, Mrs. Bubalo, she was a huge champion for me. Yeah. And then I was in speech and debate, and I've had a couple different teachers in there that really championed, that brings, as you can imagine, a very diverse group of people together, and I think that those were relationships that really mattered, that said bring all of your complexities and bring all of your stories together, and they're welcome here.
So talking about someone being a champion for you, I like that. Not even using the word mentor, but somebody who's champion for you. What were some right things that you saw them be consistent in to be a champion for you? Is there anything that stood out to you? They were consistent in doing this.
Yeah, I think that part of it was making me feel known and loved and making me feel seen, taking that one-on-one time to say, hey, I know that you've been doing this. Yeah. And then for me, it was also kind of some of the public recognition that you got of that too, right? I'm a firstborn, and just saying hey, Jenna was out. I used to kick the soccer ball at my stop sign because I would do a lot of free kicks. And so that was how I knew I could get the right height. And I would just back up and hit the stop sign, which I'm sure my neighbors loved, But I can still remember a coach saying that he had noticed that, and how great then I was doing on my set pieces. And, you know, so when they did the balance, you know, and then I also require being kept in check, you know, and that really matters to me. The people that felt our relationship was strong enough to say, hey, you know, you're wrong on this, or you're out of bounds here. Yeah. You know, that mattered too.
That's good. So there's a couple of things. So my son plays soccer, and he loves soccer. And, you know, I remember a time whenever he was really always talking about soccer. I was like, Zell, if you really like soccer this much, you should be always having a ball at your feet. That was just the wrong thing to say, because now there's always a ball at his feet, and he's always kicking it in the house. And no, it's really good. But I'm gonna suggest that kicking at the stop sign. I'm trying to think which stop sign he can do it be safe and not cars driving by.
Yeah. I lived on a cul-de-sac growing like a T street, so and it had this grass patch, so I could just back up and practice hitting that stop sign. You know, I imagine like in basketball, it's, you know, you're shooting from different spots, and that's how I was able to kind of measure that.
That is a brilliant idea.
It was a lot, and you know, if you don't hit it, it's a punishment to go chase that ball.
But I think that's one of the things that he's definitely needing to work on, and I think that's a great idea to be able to do that. Now, you talked about being too much, so self-awareness is so key, right?
Yeah.
When did you start being that self-aware? Like, okay, and what did you mean by too much? Maybe I'm want to make sure.
So I can actually remember one of my childhood best friends was a year older than me, and I know she didn't mean it this way, but I can still remember I didn't get invited to her birthday party one year because she told me, like, you're just too much, you know, because I'm loud, and, you know, and I did some work with I worked with a life coach for a year and a half, and that was transformative for me. And we were just talking, and it, like, somehow that experience came up to the surface, and I can literally, Hetty, tell you that, like, that was when some things changed for me.
Wow.
You know, and I would say that's not on purpose, but, you know, like, that set me down a path of making some choices that I look back on now that you're like, oh, why didn't I stick to my values on that one? Or, which I think we all do, right? Yeah. Like, we all go through those seasons. But yeah, I mean, especially as a woman, right? You know, it's, it can be challenging. I've been the only woman in a lot of rooms. Yeah. And that's usually handled with respect and courtesy and those kinds of things. But, you know, when you're loud and opinionated in high school or college, or, you know, like, not everybody receives that really well, you know? And I think I've had to learn really well too, like, what matters most. Like, when am I going all in on something? You know, like, not everything warrants a response, right? Yeah. And that's something too, I think, that's unique about growing up with social media, you know, because the backlash of a knee-jerk reaction is can be so much bigger than it was, you know? And so I think we've just kind of had to learn, you know, what matters. And I think for telling good stories, you know, I don't want anything that I put out there to mean that we can't go to dinner to talk about it first. You know, like, I see that, especially with the political stuff now, you know, it's like, man, I feel pretty left behind by a lot of things going on right now. And it can be hard. I don't like the tone and tenor. And if that's how you're presenting, like, I don't want to go to dinner with you and talk about it, where I think we could have a productive conversation. So I don't want anybody to feel like we can't go have a productive conversation about whatever it is. You know?
That's good. Now, you talked about telling stories. Yeah. You were the chief storyteller for City Care. How did you come into that, and when did you realize that you were a storyteller to where you say, I can go help a brand tell better stories? What did that look like? How did you come into that?
That's so funny. So my career started politically, right? Which is telling stories. Like, when candidates are running for office, their direct mail, the speeches they're giving, everything is building a story. And I fundamentally believe the most compelling story wins. Right? Yeah. I won't talk about which races to give you some of those examples. I don't, you know, but, like, the most compelling story wins. And I think that is true for nonprofits as well. So I have worked for a couple nonprofits and kind of got some of that experience too. But I mean, I got connected to City Care. I really do feel like it was a season of preparation for me. And the Lord was just kind of preparing something that He had for me to do. And I got connected with the most excellent leaders. And I learned a lot from them in that role, you know? But I think that it just came down to, I can provide you consistency, and I can provide you good narrative, you know? And I believe that then that builds connection, which then builds buy-in and stewardship, you know? And if you just steward that cycle really well, you know, my bent is always fundraising, you know, you see the dollars come in, and not because it's all about money, but because it's all about garnering resources to help those that don't have any.
Yeah.
You know, and I mean, I learned so much there. And I just think at the end of the day, stories matter because we all share the human experience.
Yeah.
And we all have dignity, inherent dignity, because we are people.
Yeah.
You know, and our stories look so different. But if you remember that resonates deeply with people.
Yeah. Yeah. No, and that's what this podcast is all about, is just letting people share their story.
Yeah.
Because I know that when we do that, people are going to learn from you. Like, as people are listening, I'm learning from you. I'm over here taking notes and trying to ask questions, right? And then we're inspired by one another when we share our stories and we connect deep, you know. Yeah. I always give the example, like, if I find out someone likes peanut butter and I like peanut butter, I'm like, oh my goodness, we connect, right?
Yeah,
like, let's go eat some peanut butter
right.
together. And so it's cool to hear you talk about doing that for an organization or a brand, and even a political race where you're doing it for an individual for their campaign. What is your day-to-day as a storyteller? What does your day-to-day look like whenever you were doing that?
Yeah, I mean, it was, you know, we had social media, you're telling stories. I started a podcast, we were telling stories. And then it's stewarding communications to all your stakeholders, we're telling stories. It's introductory meetings with city officials or prospective donors or partners, you know, and you're still telling stories.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that it can be so hard because you want to have metrics, right? But when you're doing work that's deeply relational, that's hard to measure.
Yeah.
The only measurement is stories.
Yeah.
So when nonprofits don't tell good stories, no one knows about the depth and breadth of their work.
Yeah.
You know, and so that's what my day-to-day looked like, you know, was just, you know, I told you I time block a lot. So, you know, I could front load some of that social media, get it all kind of scheduled out, knowing ahead of time, though, what we were building towards. Yeah. One of my very favorite events we did was a luncheon called Transform the Night. And so City Care is opening the only low barrier night shelter for those experiencing homelessness in Oklahoma City. It'll be open later this year. And we built this whole story around transforming the night. And what does that look like? That starts with us who aren't experiencing homelessness, transforming our perspective. Once you hear a story, you can't unhear it, right? So we have to have some exposure, and transforming how we see our position, our resources, our grace, our love, and how do we leverage that for others?
Yeah.
And we just built a really beautiful narrative around that combined spoken word, art on the walls, music. I mean, you know, it's just, when you think about the 5 senses and how can you engage all of them, that's going to be a more memorable experience. And it was lovely.
We're talking about the 5 senses and kind of understanding, like, when somebody walks in the room, you're trying to get them to experience all 5. Is there some other things that you can kind of rattle off for people that would be simple to help them become better storytellers?
Yeah. So I think that let's use the 5 senses thing. And this is something that Rachel Freeman at City Care taught me really, really well. So I'm highly organized. For many years, I thought that meant I had to be in administration, right? Because I was usually the only girl in the room. But the Lord gifted me with the ability with vision and strategy. So I could see something 10 steps ahead. So I knew these steps that all, 1 through 9 that needed to be done to get to 10, but no one else saw them. So I was the one willing to do the grunt work, the hard work to get to that because it mattered.
Yeah.
Well, through the self-discovery journey, if you want to call it that, I learned that no, I'm visionary and strategic, and details don't matter a lot to me. And she taught me how important they are to curating the beginning of a story. So it starts with something as simple as, like, what is the invitation you're sending? Like, are there textures of paper? Are there design elements that start to connect with people to build this story? And she's masterful at that. And I've learned so much from her there. And then, how do you start to engage their senses when they come in? So like, what's the food style set up? I mean, like, just these things that you would never think that really matter. Yeah. So that luncheon's an easy example. We had, giant charcuterie on each table, family style, because like we wanted to inspire conversation and connection. We can't do that seated around a round table with everybody in their own plate, right?
Yeah.
So just how do you start to build what you're trying to get to at the end of the day? Yeah. And I think it starts too with not coming in too strong. Yeah. Because when you present something, especially homelessness is an issue, or foster care is something I'm passionate about, it can seem so overwhelming if you start out with, there's over 400,000 kids in foster care in the United States. It's like, I can't do anything about that, you know? But if I can come down to you and say, hey, you're in X county and there are 13 kids there. You know what I mean? Like that's something that you can help with.
Yeah, that's good. So that's talking about events there. Is it the same when approaching a story on social media? Like, what does that look like?
Yeah.
What were some things that you learned or tips that you could provide?
The number one thing to me is your photography matters. Pay for professional photography. You know, Instagram is high image.
Yeah.
You know, and if you know the difference between a great photo and a not so great photo.
Yeah.
And it's affordable to find great photography.
Yeah.
Because that's the starting point, you know? And then it's building that content out, right? And I think it's kind of fleshing out like what requires a long post, what doesn't. How many times am I going to tell you about an issue before I call you to action? You know, you can't start out with come volunteer at this, you know, like it's like, hey, no, let me build some buy-in with this issue. Let me expose you to something and then give you several opportunities to respond. I think that matters.
That's good. So what did you learn some tricks on determining when to use a long post, when not to? Like that just doesn't naturally come to everyone. Is there something to help people be able to do that and kind of gauge that?
Yeah, sure. So I think that number one is consistency matters, right? So like you're building some loyalty there, you know? And I just think that you have to balance it. But if you're in the middle of a campaign or a story, long narrative is fine. Because I think that the piece that you're missing is repetition, right? So you need to tell the same story on Instagram that you're telling on Facebook, that you're telling in your email, that you're telling in your letter. You know, they need to all start to tie in together, and just pay attention to your metrics. You know, like if you're noticing that like, oh, those long posts are only getting 10 likes, but a quote card, that's getting 50 likes. Well, then I'm probably going to shorten my copy on the beautiful image that's not drawing a lot of attention. I'm going to increase some of my copy on some of those quote cards to start to build that narrative, whatever that looks like. So just pay attention to those metrics. And also, I think that an important thing I've learned is just stay true to the story you want to tell. Because the people that matter are going to find it and they're going to read it and they're going to buy in.
Yeah. That's good. That's good. Can you share some brands that you feel like do a really good job at storytelling?
Yeah.
Do you have some that you've been watching or used to watch? Or?
Yeah, so I know this is back to soccer, but I feel like the U.S. women's national team, their players and even like their official, I feel like they've been doing a really good job of telling the story of that women's team, you know, and then you watch the other brands that have seen that as an opportunity and come around it, you know, they've got obviously the equal pay discussion that they're having. They're talking about, you know, just the disparity of opportunity that women have had in sports versus men. And I feel like they have been the tipping point for blowing that up to every sport. You know, it's been really fascinating to watch. I think that they do a really incredible job. Somebody locally that I think does a good job is I think the Chickasaws do a really good job telling their story through some of their media. And I really love those Bank First commercials. Of the different towns in Main Street, you know, I don't know if it's just that beautiful imagery really matters. But I feel like everybody kind of has a connection to something like that here in Oklahoma, you know, and I'm not from here, but my grandparents are from a small town, you know, like everybody kind of has that in their family, I feel like, and it's an easy connection point.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. Going back to something you mentioned earlier, being the only woman in the room sometimes I can be the only African American in the room.
Sure.
And what are some things like, what would you tell some ladies like if they come into that moment where they look around and like, I'm the only woman in the room? What have you learned from that, and what do you do to kind of make it I guess more comfortable for yourself and for maybe the guys in the room? Is there something you do?
I actually do. I wear a skirt. So a friend of mine and a former client, Patrice Douglas, had taught me a long time ago to not shy away from being a woman. Like that I don't need to walk in the room and act like the men to get my work done. That my femininity and my strength was required in that room. So I always like to wear a heel so that I know I can look somebody in the eye. It helps me feel strong. And then I like to wear a skirt that just says like, I'm embracing that I am full woman here. And I'm not saying, you know, I own pantsuits too. They're great, you know, but I didn't feel the need to act the way the men did. And also I think just biding your time till you have a really important contribution. You know, it's easy to sit in those rooms, and both women and men both can do this, but it's easy to sit there and listen to everybody talk about how much they know.
Yeah.
You know, but whenever you can come in with a really good bite, like, that's powerful.
Yeah.
And then I always try to be for them, for my client, you know? And so sometimes I'm the only one in the room asking them what's best for them.
Yeah.
When they've sat in this room and heard from all these other people about what they can be doing for them or how they should be doing things. And so I can kind of come in and be the counterpoint of like, but, you know, what do you want to do? Like, what does this look like for you? You know? And I think that's been really powerful.
Oh, that's good. That is so good. So you've probably done that a number of times now. Do you feel like you've gotten to a place where it's like it's become common for you? Or do you still, every time you walk in the room, like, you're aware of that?
Yeah, I think I'm aware of it because I also have started, you know, I like to try to mentor along some other gals too. And so I think I notice it too when I can sense somebody else is uncomfortable in that room.
Yeah.
You know, and it's like I kind of want to just come behind them and be like, stand tall and firm in who you are, because we need who you are in this room. We don't need who you're trying to be, because I'm seeing that, you know. I think it's like, here's the permission to be exactly who you are, you know, and feel strong in that. I don't feel uncomfortable anymore, but I'm older now, you know, I've got a lot more experience, and that's one of my things that I'm trying to help inspire in the gals that are coming along behind me. I think the more women we have in those leadership roles, the more women we get.
For sure.
Period. And I think that will really make a difference.
Yeah. Yeah. That's good. Since we're talking about women being in a room, being the only woman, let's go back to Mom Who Works. Like, when did you say to yourself, I need to do this regardless of everything that's on my plate? And was there a moment that clicked for you? Do you have that story?
Yeah, I do. So actually, I was on a run. It was September of 2016. And I only know that because I had to like stop and make a note in my phone.
Okay.
And it felt like, you know, I was tired. You know, I was not tired of working, but I was tired of the expectations that came on a working mom. And I was in a season 2 with like, my husband was super busy, and I just was like, no one is expecting the same things from him that people are expecting of me, you know? And I was like, also in that season, work, while a huge priority and in seasons is definitely the priority, my family is my priority now too. You know, I'm a new mom at that point. My son was, you know, almost a year old, and it's like, the ordering of the words mattered. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like, working mom implied that my work came first, and that wasn't true for me anymore. And it had been true for a very long time. And so just this, I felt like divine concept came to me. I buy domain names. I own a bazillion domain names. It's really embarrassing. But so, you know, it was just like this idea of what is, you know, a mom who works. And then I just felt like this outpouring too of like, what about a mom who quits? What about a mom who fails? What about a mom who dreams? What about a mom who believes?
All those domains?
I'm centering it all under Mom Who Works, Hetty. But I do hope that, you know, I want those conversations.
Yes.
So that was, but you know, it took me over 2 years to actually do anything about it. It felt so special and important, and I didn't know what I wanted to do with it. And I don't regret that waiting season. Because I think, you know, it's like, hurry up, somebody else is going to do your thing. And I just don't believe that. Like, I believe that you can do exactly what you're designed to do, like, and in the time that you need to do it in.
And if somebody else is doing it, it's okay. There's so many opportunities out there for people,
and everybody has a different perspective and experience.
Different angle on it. Yeah,
you know, like, we're talking about working motherhood is like not new, right? Like,
you didn't
go on Instagram for 5 seconds, right? You know, but my perspective, my experience is different, you know, and that matters.
So for the moms that are working out there, they come and just follow you on social media. What does it look like for them to be a part of?
Thank you for asking.
Yes,
at Mom Who Works. momwhoworks.com. And there are some sections there that like we offer reinforcements. So you could submit a question you're having, and then I have some experts that I rely on to help you answer your questions. And then we've started hosting meetups, and we're going to be hosting our first meetup and retreat April 30th to May 1st of 2020. And that'll be here in town. We're bringing in a powerhouse speaker, and I just really believe it's going to be a time for community and empowerment. And also I just feel like you need that like reinforcement just to know that you're not alone. Motherhood is incredibly isolating. I think any path you take, being a stay-at-home mom, being a mom who works, either one can be incredibly isolating because you are balancing so much, and I just want women to know that you're not alone. And then something I hear a lot too that I'm starting to wrestle with is this idea of like, no one knows what they're doing, right? Which this might step on some toes. I want to push back on that a little bit and actually say, you know exactly what you're doing, And yeah, with your first kid, you're learning new things, but you learn new things at work all the time. Yeah. You've been learning new things your whole life. Yeah. It doesn't mean that you're not equipped with everything you need already to figure that out and do it really, really well.
Yeah, that's good. Now, you said you're having your, so how often do y'all have meetups, and what does a meetup look like? And can my wife come to it, or do you got to be a member or anything like that?
No member. It's usually, I try to make the cost pretty low barrier. We've done a few. I've tried to do them at some of the female co-working spaces in the city, just to kind of invite. My prayer is always like, if just one woman leaves feeling, more true to herself or more equipped, then it's worth it, So hosting in those spaces has been important to me because I want you to find a community if you need one, This retreat's going to be a little bit different. We're going to host, I'm believing for a huge turnout. We're hosting it at OCU in one of their auditoriums in the Minor School of Business. Yes. Because I also start a business, do your thing. And then we'll do the next day will be a full day workshop. So I'm bringing in, her name is Hillary McBride, and she's on the Liturgist podcast. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but she has done PhD work and everything around women in community and embodiment, and I just think she's going to have the right message for us. And then I've invited Cece Jones to come and MC for us, and she's a justice fighter, and you just listen to her and you're like, just preach it for me, please. Like, I want to hear from you. And so I've invited her to MC, and I just really believe that this is the time for us to start assessing, how do our employers treat moms who work? Yeah. How does our city treat it? I really want to come around that and invite businesses in too, to kind of understand, like, what are some things that can keep these women in the workforce? It's expensive to go to work. And I just want to make sure that, gals are finding places that are flexible, and that you work really hard, and you shouldn't lose your job because you want to go to your kids, assembly, and so kind of reframing that conversation.
Yeah. That's really good. Yeah, I'm excited about people being able to hear that, especially the ladies in my life. I think it's so important. So we've talked about how they can find you online. Is there other places that people can find you online?
Yeah, Jenna Worthen. I'm on Twitter and Instagram. You can friend me on Facebook, but I've just cut Facebook out. I don't leave Facebook happier than when I got on Facebook right now. So I just can't even. I've been trying, but
why is my wife? So we just recently got off a fast, and part of her fast was getting off social media, and she was like, my life has changed. I guess I'm not on it like that, but there's people they take a break from Facebook and they're like, their life's changed. She's talking about how much more she's getting done. I think that's a big part of it. But kind of the same thing, I guess if you start going down your feed, just the things that people, it's the negativity and those kind of things. And it's heartbreaking. Yeah. It just shows the mindset of a lot of people when they start. Now, things happen in life.
Totally.
And I think that's fine to share. But when you're just straight up negative and mean, it's just like, why?
Yeah, I want to be a part of things that invite connection, and curate positive conversation that can be different, right? I'm sure that you and I have differences in political, faith, whatever it may be. Yeah. But I just don't want to lead with that, And so when that's what's led with, whereas Instagram, at least I feel like I'm building some community with you first. And so it leaves me happy. Twitter's where I get most of my news, and it can be a dumpster fire too. But, at least you can kind of, I've got a different crowd over there that I really enjoy.
Yeah. So which one's your go-to?
Instagram or Twitter, either one.
Okay.
Yep. Okay. But trying to, be consistent with Mom Who Works. We tell a lot of stories on there too. So, and Hetty, one of the things that's been the hardest for me is how many women I invite to share their story, and they think they're not worthy of sharing their story. My story doesn't matter, or I'm just this, or I'm just that, and it's just, I want to shake them because I'm like, there's so much power in your story. Yeah. And I can't tell you, everybody's like, oh my gosh, me too. Oh my gosh, me too, and I think that matters.
Yeah. Now, are you going to be one of the speakers for the exchange?
I'm not for the exchange. I did just do the Working Mom Summit that Hannah hosted, and that was tremendous.
Good.
Yeah,
good.
I was so pumped.
Yeah, Hannah loves you. Hannah and our friends, and I always say, well, who's the lady that I can get on the pod? And she mentioned, she talked about how much she loves you.
That's sweet.
And the work that you're doing.
I think the Treasury is phenomenal, and I think the way Hannah is, inspiring and bringing women together, just like Amber is at the collective. I just think it's so beautiful, and it's such a joy to watch them soar.
Well, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me,
I
Hetty.
deeply appreciate this. You you have a busy schedule, so I feel really honored that you took time out of your schedule to jump on here and share your story.
I appreciate it. Thank you for the work that you're doing of sharing stories, because it really, really matters.
Yeah, I think so too. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you again for hitting that play button for another episode of the Hetty Coleman podcast. And as always, ladies and gentlemen, go win.